petroleum here. But did the government not anticipate, for instance, that funding this budget 2019 will be a challenge? Because all of this played together when we talked about the increase in wages. We had the budget also as part of it, and we had these two elements basically, and then the Alfred Rwani, Mr. Rwani, Bismarck Rwani committee to look at how best to approach all of this together. Did the government miss that foresight that these benchmarks may not necessarily be realistic?
No, I think if you look at the medium-term expenditure framework, that covers, because you consider the MTEF, which is the medium-term expenditure framework, before you consider the budget. That is the way it works. The framework for funding the budget was clearly stated there. The amount that will come from tax and the amount that will come from borrowing. You know, we have a deficit of about 2 trillion, and the way that the borrowing will be done are clearly stated there. And when the president was presenting the issue of this minimum wage, I remember he said that a committee was going to be set up to talk about how they will fund the outcome of the minimum wage, which I think was that what. So I think that was properly, anticipated. Even though some of the assumptions are something that we can interrogate, whether those assumptions are realistic or not. The budget is still before the National Assembly. Some of these things will still be discussed. So it is the National Assembly that will determine finally what kind of benchmarks that we will use. But having said that, we need to deal with the issue of accountability. Because governance is not just about collecting revenue. It's also about accounting for what you have collected. If you see the last Auditor General's report, so many agencies are not even rendering accounts.
So do they have to go the way of VAT?
Many agencies are not.
Do they have to go the way of increasing the VAT to finance anything?
So certainly not. I mean, we have so many options. We have the cost reduction option. We have the revenue optimization option. Now, if you have a report from the Auditor General, there are even some agents that have never even filed any accounts. Some of them filed accounts maybe the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I haven't seen any consequences for that.
But there are also some organizations that collect VAT and they do not remit.
Then they should be sanctioned.
Yeah, which
it's
is
an institutional thing. You was sanctioned
which is part of the challenge I was talking about.
Yes.
Remitting the ones collected.
Yes, there should be sanctions. There should be consequences.
You know, speaking about those yachts, I understand the yachts that they're already collecting. That regime has already started. So, but what should government be doing at this stage? Should they even broach the topic of lowering the tax rate to get more people into the tax net?
Yes, based on our current economic realities. And when we say lowering the tax rates, you don't just pick an item from the tax law and you think that will give you the results. I've mentioned here that our VAT law is 25 years old. So it's not in tandem with the current economic realities. There are so many things that you need to change in that law. Our company income tax, when you look, the current framework that we are using is 1990, 30 years old. So you need to also review that. Until you do that, you cannot get the right results.
But when you talk about review, what comes to some people's mind is review upwards.
And I'm saying not necessarily upwards. There are so many provisions that you need to. I give you an example. The company income tax. There's what is called the commencement rule in the company income tax. Now, applying that rule simply means that you are going to, or we have been taxing startups double taxation, or they pay twice the amount of taxes in their first 2 years. Now that is not helping any business to grow. There is another one called the minimum tax. The minimum tax is taxing your capital, your asset, is not making any business to grow, and that is not impacting on the economy.
If
so
you
you
tax
need
capital,
yeah.
there's a risk involved in that.
Yes, but what the revenue agency is looking at, oh, we are generating X trillion in a year, but we are not looking at the total implication of the laws
Because you need to
in
show
the economy.
how much have you invested.
Yes.
How much of that is your capital? Because if you go ahead and tax people's capital, how do they get enough money to plow back, just as Mr. Moda has suggested?
It's even worse when you borrow money from the financial institutions, you use it to buy assets, you pay your interest, and you still come and pay tax on the asset you bought from the money you got from the financial institution. So all these laws have to be reviewed. And I made some recommendations. I can still offer them. I'm saying that startups companies, in the first 5 years of business, they should not pay CIT more than 10%. Then you'll be able to see so many startups springing up. You know, the tax burden is less, they grow, they absorb more people. Then you are solving your unemployment problem. And when you employ people, you pay them salary, what happens? Their disposable income increases and their consumption level also increase. So whatever amount you think you are losing CIT, you still get it back in the form of VAT. So it's a system thinking approach to solving economic issues. Okay. But what we have today is we just look at, or we just punch the calculator. If we increase this by X percentage, oh, we'll get this amount.
Because the Minister of Finance said that they are concentrating on decarbonated drinks. Is it wrong for them to say, okay, we think that this is where we'll get the kinds of revenue that we want, focusing on decarbonated drinks, knowing that it is taken almost every day by almost 80% of the population?
Well, you also need to consider who is producing the decarbonated drinks. If that will affect the level of consumption, will you still get the results that you have projected that you will get? So these are things that you take into consideration. And I will say it again, there is no way we can solve our economic problems if we don't review all the policy frameworks. We look at the fiscal policies, we look at the monetary policies. They must complement each other before you have a buoyant economy.
Mr. Moda, give us your concluding thoughts.
Now, talking about revenue optimization, because this is not just about the private sector paying tax. We have some major government agencies that are revenue generating. And some of them are sitting on really huge amounts of money. We need to compel them to remit what they should remit to the federation accounts. I've seen over the years, even to get some of them to present their budget before the National Assembly was a big issue. So we need to weigh in on this. Get that, because some of them can really put a lot on the table. And there has to be a framework to compel them to do so. Just as the FRS is chasing around the private investors, we should have a framework to also monitor what is happening in these revenue-generating agencies. Some of them have the capacity to double or even triple the kind of revenue that they are contributing to the federation account. And we need to also unlock the revenue opportunities in the oil and gas sector. For as long as we didn't sign the PIB, we are losing a lot in terms of investment, in terms of revenue from oil and gas. So all these reforms are very important. So we should look beyond just taxing investors. We should be looking at how we can also unlock revenue in some key revenue-generating agencies, as highlighted in the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
All right, that's where we anchor. We hope that, who knows, if the FRS will respond a little further than what we've seen. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. Muda Yusuf, DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Dr. Chris David, futurist and tax expert.